So with that, we'll get started. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. This is a virtual brunch and learn that is sponsored by the Deep Creek Watershed Foundation, and it is facilitated by University of Maryland Extension here in Garrett County. So I just wanted to go over a couple of quick Zoom controls in case you are new to Zoom. There is an unmute and start video button. We are asking everybody to keep their videos off and keep their microphones muted so that we can get a nice clean recording. You can click on the participant link to see who is in the meeting, and you can also open the chat box if you would like to interact with any of our speakers during the presentation. We will be taking questions at the end, so enter the questions as you have them, and we will read them off at the end and try to get you an answer. Also, if you need closed captioning, please just click on the live CC transcript button at the bottom, and that will appear on your screen. So with that, a quick introduction to myself. My name is Ashley Bodkins, and I'm with the University of Maryland Extension Office here in Garrett County. And I work with the Maryland Master Gardener Program and Home Horticulture Education. I am also an advisor to the Deep Creek Watershed Foundation, and that is our connection to that group and how we work together to facilitate these presentations. So today we are going to get a watershed update from the Deep Creek Administrative Council. And I have joining me today Mr. Bob Hoffman, and he is going to say a couple words about the Deep Creek Watershed Foundation.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay, Ash?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Good morning, everybody. As Ashley said, I'm Bob Hoffman. I'm currently the president of the Deep Creek Watershed Foundation. I want to welcome all of you to this brunch and learn. And as Ashley said, we, the foundation, are one of the sponsors for this brunch and learn, but it is really the one who is doing all the work is Ashley, and of course the speakers for the Administrative Council. And we continually appreciate Ashley's efforts because these are good educational virtual sessions. So the topic today, the Administrative Council, is a very important one. And the reason I say that is because the Administrative Council was created after the development of what is called the Watershed Management Plan. And the Watershed Management Plan, said another way, is basically a strategic plan for how the watershed, which includes the lake, should be maintained as far as its health over time. And that just doesn't happen, automatically. It takes a lot of work. DNR, of course, owns the lake and spends a great deal of money taking care of the lake, the care and feeding, make sure that it remains healthy and usable for fishing and other recreational purposes. And that's where the Watershed Foundation comes in. It is also the care and feeding, if you will, of the lake is also the focus of the Deep Creek Watershed Foundation. And that is the connection for the foundation to the lake, to the Watershed Management Plan, and ultimately we deal with the Administrative Council as well, as it is responsible for monitoring and checking the progress in the implementation of the Watershed Management Plan. What the foundation does over time is it solicits financial support to fund projects that go towards the implementation of the Watershed Management Plan. That's what we do. We solicit donations and turn those donations right around to fund projects. The board for the Watershed Foundation are all volunteers, just as the advisors, much like Ashley, are all volunteers. So there are no salaries paid for out of the money that we generate through donations, through grants, and that sort of thing for the projects. So that's what the connection is with the Deep Creek Watershed Foundation to the Watershed Management Plan, and that's very large. How the Administrative Council fits in as well. And now they're going to talk today about what they do, in monitoring the implementation of the watershed management plan. So I want to thank all of those who are participating today in advance. I want to thank all of those who have signed up to learn about the Administrative Council today. And thank you for the few minutes to kind of provide this introduction on behalf of the Deep Creek Watershed Foundation. And Ashley, please take it away.
All right, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that introduction. So with that, we are going to roll right into the slides for the Administrative Council.
Great. Thanks for getting that started, Ashley. And Bob, thanks for the introduction. Hi, I'm Sierra Wigfield. I'm the Senior Planner for Garrett County Government. This is our presentation for the Administrative Council relating to the Deep Creek Lake Watershed Management Plan. You can change the slide, Ashley. The next slide is a quick overview of what we'll be doing. So essentially an overview of the Administrative Council, a little bit of background on the Watershed Management Plan. Then you'll get some specific updates from each of the organizations, part of the Administrative Council, some updates on the Arrowhead Dredging Project, and then we'll leave some time open for questions from everybody. So let's get it rolling. Like I said, my name is Sierra Wigfield, Senior Planner for Garrett County Government. I'm one arm of the Administrative Council. Bruce Michaels helps me with the county duties. He's a project manager for Garrett County. We also have Julie Bortz. She's a natural resource biologist with the Resource Assessment Office for the Department of Natural Resources. And Jim George is also a representative on our board for Maryland Department of Environment. He's a policy advisor at the Water Science Administration. You can change the slide. All right, so a little bit about the Watershed Management Plan development. So back in 2012, Secretary of DNR John Griffin pitched the idea that a watershed management plan would be good at a public meeting. The plan was a very cooperative effort. I was not around for it, but I've heard tales of this between DNR, the county, and the local community. A lot of stakeholder groups were involved. And I think a lot of the people that are involved with the foundation and property owners associations currently. This is like a very complex plan. There's over 16 goals in the plan that cover various let's say pots and topics. And then each of those goals are addressed with an objective and then strategies. So you can get really deep within how we are achieving that. So this is a link to it. Whenever we have our presentation available for people, you can click on the plan and review it. The plan was completed in October 2014, and then it was adopted with amendments in 2016. Next slide, please. And that brings us to the Administrative Council. So the purpose of the Administrative Council is all of our organizations, DNR, MDE, and the county want to protect and restore Deep Creek Lake. It's important to all of us. And this is why. So for the county, we're the light blue area, that's the watershed. So the county kind of oversees the land for the zoning and development purposes, as well as infrastructure such as water and sewer. And then you have the lake levels, which is my blue line, that is MDE. So they kind of issue the permits for the water levels. Jim will go into this more. And lastly, DNR oversees the management of the lake and the lake buffer. So we all share this lake management, but we each have a little piece in it. So it's really important for us to work cooperatively to reach the ends, which is to protect the lake. So keep on going. So the Administrative Council, after the watershed management plan was adopted in 2016, shortly thereafter, there was a formal MOU between the organizations, which was kind of a novel idea at the time, because before then, the organizations, there was a lack of communication. But now we have monthly meetings. We all talk about the various aspects of what we're working on in terms of how it relates to the lake. And I would say it's one of the most cooperative processes that I've encountered in my working career, very open. And so we've renewed this MOU for every 2 years since 2016, and it looks to be continuing this way. Go ahead, Ashley. Thanks. So some current activities, we're reviewing the watershed management plan. Like I said, it covers a wide breadth and depth of topics. So we're working on reviewing that, trying to fill the position of a watershed coordinator. There was one previously at the county, but they left about a year ago. So meanwhile, Bruce and I have been kind of filling it in, but kind of realizing that there's more tasks than we can do on the side of our other jobs. And then also we're looking to update that MOU here this fall. So I'd like to go back one. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the watershed coordinators that has, these are some duties that we'd like to have it covered by a single point of contact, because they're really important to have somebody to contact so people can reach out to them, get their lake questions answered or concerns, and also distribute this kind of information like we are doing today, because the watershed, the administrative council have been doing a lot of work and we'd like to tell you about it. Also try to find some sort of financing strategy in order to pay for the projects that we have in the watershed management plan to implement them. And also possibly fund the watershed coordinator position on a sustainable basis. Also like for the watershed coordinator to do some data coordination. There's a lot of data out there from all sorts of agencies, and definitely thinking by putting it together, we can gain more knowledge from that. So, and then lastly, the Education Advisory Committee was an active entity whenever the watershed management plan was complete. They were like a technical committee. Since COVID, that committee kind of has not met. So we'd like to restart that as one of the duties of the watershed coordinator. And that group provides like technical assistance from a diverse range of folks. So from agriculture to like economy to utilities and things like that, it kind of tourism, recreation, kind of all the different facets of the users of the lake. So we can run things by them to kind of vet them before they go to the public in terms of how do we answer these questions or solve these problems. So interested in looking into that deeper. Go ahead, Ashley. And lastly, I'd like to tell you about some of the recent projects that the Administrative Council has done in the last year or two. First of all, we love to collaborate. And so we have worked with the University of Maryland Global Campus students in their environmental management capstone project. So you get a group of 3 to 4 students each semester, give them a project and a scope, and they run with it. So they've done all these sort of projects for us in the last just couple years. It's been really great to work with them. So there's quite a broad expanse for them to work on. So they've been reviewing literature most recently about the water level impacts on submerged aquatic vegetation for us. The Administrative Council has also brought together some like science collaborative meetings with all the people who have monitors at the lakes, like USGS and DNR, the county, the health department. So everybody who has some data about the lake, we kind of just was like, we met and we're like, I have this data, and we talked about that. We haven't figured out how to put that together yet. So like I said, a watershed coordinator to pull that off would be great. In addition, we've been working on the Silver Tree Shoreline Stabilization Project that got completed this fall. So if you'd want to go out to Silver Tree in the marina there's actually different examples of shoreline erosion prevention. So from a lower cost riprap example to a more expensive Rosetta Stone wall that's also there. So you can check that out. In addition, we're applying for other grants such as stream monitoring, trying to get a Chesapeake Conservation Corps to come on staff and help us with a couple of work tasks, looking for some action plans from EPA. And then in addition to applying for the Keep Maryland Beautiful Cleanup and Green Grant. And then we're also rolling out WaterWise with the collaboration with Ashley and the University of Maryland Extension Office, and also trying to encourage the different science collaborators and other entities that monitor the lake have these brunch and learns with Ashley. So keep it rolling. I do want to really put a plug in for our WaterWise program. So it's a free program that recognizes property owners for implementing the best management practice on their properties to protect water quality. So haven't had any takers on this. So please reach out to Ashley or myself. you go to the website, you can see that we have a big checklist, and each one of the checklist items get you points, and you want to achieve like 36 points. So your yard measures up to a yardstick, and then you get a sign. And I would love to have a pilot project from each of the watersheds in the county. We haven't had any takers, so if you would like us to help you with that, please, now's the time to speak up. We'd love for all the property owners to do this. And these are the various like sectors that we're looking at. Ashley, can you keep on going? In addition to rolling out the WaterWise program, we received a grant from Keep Maryland Beautiful Cleanup and Green grant. We're hoping to give out some free compost bins along with some composting workshops that Ashley will be holding at various virtual as well as the libraries. And then at the promotion through Garrett County Solid Waste and Recycling Program, we're going to be giving out these little pails at the different events. So you can put your name in a drawing for a nice scrap pail to have on your counter. We are still waiting for the grant to be received so we can purchase these items, but we're hoping to kick this off during the Garrett County Fair and having workshops through August, and just in time to get your compost bin for leaf collection time. So anyway, keep your eye out for that. And we should probably have a sign up for something, Ashley. I just realized that. So we'll work on that. Keep on going. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Jim George with MDE. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you, Sierra. And thanks to everybody who's joined us today. And also I want to thank Bob with the Deep Creek Lake Watershed Foundation. They continue to impress me with the many projects they pull together and funding that is behind those. And I urge people to support the foundation because they do a very good job of directing those funds that they collect. And it really does help the community out with this, really great resource of the Deep Creek Lake. And Ashley, for her work that she's been doing for some time now on these lunch and learn projects presentations. They're extremely informative and help bind the community together with common knowledge. And a shout out to the Maryland Extension Service Office and her work on that. I just wanted to speak briefly about the Brookfield Renewables Hydroelectric Dam, which is permitted by the Maryland Department of Environment. So the dam basically uses water, and they receive a water appropriations permit from MDE, which was last issued in September 2020 and expires in August 2032. So it's a 12-year permit, although it does have opportunities for reopening the permit to address issues that are critical. And the primary thing the permit does is it sets limits on the upper and lower lake levels, and these are referred to as rule bands. So the water has to stay between those two upper and lower limits, and typically at the beginning of spring it's at the highest, and come throughout winter or that period it's at the lowest levels. The permit formalizes multi-objective uses of the dam and operation of the dam to meet those uses. So the obvious one is power generation for Brookfield, and it's renewable energy that we all like to see, green energy, and the reduction of coal fire plants and things like that in the face of climate change. They also manage the levels to support recreation as well as natural resources in the lake itself. And they manage water releases downstream in the Occoganey River for whitewater rafting recreation and temperature enhancements, because it is a cold water fishery, and trout fishermen love the fact that the reservoir can release water and keep that downstream water cold. Also within the permit is a requirement for Brookfield to have a zebra mussel monitoring program. This is an invasive species that, if any of you have ever looked into it, when zebra mussels take hold in a place, they grow like mad, and they encrust everything and cause extremely costly damage. So keeping zebra mussels out of the lake is a huge priority, and the Brookfield has a requirement in their permit to monitor for zebra mussels. Next slide, please, Ashley. So another issue is winter lake level drawdowns. So the water does naturally draw down over in late fall just because we get less rain at that time. But sometimes we need the water drawn down to its lowest permitted level in order to support various projects. These include things like fixing utilities that run near the shoreline but are underwater most of the time, shoreline stabilization projects where erosion is occurring along the shoreline, dam repair itself, and other projects that require the water to be a little bit lower near the shoreline when working on them. The appropriations permit allows drawdowns to the lowest bound of the rule of the water level, but Brookfield's not obligated by the permit to conduct drawdowns. There's nothing in the permit that says thou shalt do drawdowns. Therefore, Brookfield does these drawdowns as a courtesy to the community. And however, because of the complicated scheduling they need to do to generate energy and whatnot, they've asked for 1 year advance notice. And in order to give some predictability, we've put together a draft policy in coordination with Brookfield and leaders of various organizations in the community to have a 3-year cycle of drawdowns. Every 3 years, draw it down so people can do these projects on the shoreline. However, there is an exception for emergencies or special projects that need to be done. And so far, Brookfield has been responsive to those requests for special exceptions. There's another strong interest among the community, and it's also reflected somewhat in the Deep Creek Lake Watershed Management Plan, and that is controlling submerged aquatic vegetation, which is quite a nuisance for boaters and bathers. But there needs to be a balance between getting rid of submerged aquatic vegetation and the function that it plays in supporting fisheries and that type of thing. So there's an interest in using drawdowns of the lake during the winter period to knock back the submerged aquatic vegetation. And that's an issue that's under investigation and study by the state at this time, along with other collaborators. Next slide, please. You may have heard that one of the 2 turbines used to generate electricity at the dam is currently not working, and they're trying to get parts to fix it, but there have been delays in getting those parts. The likely impacts of this turbine being one of the 2 turbines being out of commission is that it makes it more difficult to do the temperature enhancement releases and certainly the whitewater releases. So Brookfield is working with the community of whitewater enthusiasts as well as businesses. Unfortunately, there's little they can do there to remedy that. However, with regard to temperature enhancements, Brookfield has been working with the Department of Natural Resources to figure out, whether they can meet those requirements with just one of their release turbines. The expectation or the hope is that it'll go back online in late August 2022 at this stage. That's the latest news on that. With regard to the shoreline stabilization projects, the state does make some funding available to people who live along the shoreline. And to initiate a project for any property along the shoreline, you want to contact the Lake Management Office, and there's a phone number for them. To do one of these projects, you do need to receive a permit from the Maryland Department of Environment. It's technically a joint state-federal permit. However, most of these projects are small enough that the Army Corps of Engineers does not need to get involved, and it's just a state decision. So the permit application needs to be put together by the property owner along the edge of the lake. However, because DNR is the owner of the buffer strip right next to the lake, they ultimately sign that application that goes to MDE. And I've put the contact name of the person at MDE who processes those applications, Paul Dossum. You can see his phone number there. That's my last slide. I'll turn it over to DNR now with the help of Ashley. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ashley, I guess I can just take it from there. My name is Julie Bortz. I'm a resource biologist with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. I actually work for a unit within DNR called Resource Assessment, and we have several units at DNR that are working here at the lake and in the watershed. And so I'm just going to give an update from some of those units as far as activities that have been ongoing in support of the watershed management plan. And I do want to first echo a big thank you to Ashley and Bob, as well as the other members of the Administrative Council. I think this Brunch and Learn, the ability for us to share the activities that we've been doing with the public is fantastic. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to tackle as the Administrative Council is to get good, accurate information out to the public and help the public understand who they can contact for more information for various activities. So within DNR, again, we essentially manage the lake and the buffer strip, again, within certain units. My unit, Resource Assessment Service, focuses on water quality monitoring. We do SAV monitoring, which is submerged aquatic vegetation monitoring, and we work with the Maryland Park Service on aquatic invasive species education and prevention. And so I'm just going to give a quick update from our unit as far as the water quality monitoring. So we have been doing water quality monitoring in the lake since 2009. We actually added what's called continuous monitoring meters in about 2017, really rolled it out in 2018. And what we've been doing since then is we've been placing these meters in the various shallow water coves of the lake in an effort to better understand how these coves are functioning. We recognized fairly early on with our lake-wide monitoring that there were differences in the main stem or the main portion of the lake water quality versus the shallow water coves. And so these water quality meters really help us understand how those shallow water coves are functioning, which helps us understand how the watershed is in that area, as well as how the lake is functioning and the ecology there. So I want to thank the Watershed Foundation. They came on board last year and provided, in partnership with the Deep Creek Property Owners Association, they combined provided 5 water quality meters to support this effort, which is fantastic. And then in addition to the Lake Management Office helping to fund additional water quality meters, we were able to kind of expand our continuous monitoring efforts. So this year, we've got meters in Pull and Run Cove, which is in the southern part of the lake, Meadow Mountain Run Cove, kind of in the central part of the lake, and Paradise Cove or Hoop Hole Run Cove in kind of the south central part of the lake. So we're basically, again, trying to get all the small coves of the lake covered. And we're about 3 years into that effort. So we expect to hopefully have that in the next year or so. Again, thanks to the donations from the foundation and the Property Owners Association. Again, the goal is to better understand how the lake is functioning and how these coves are functioning. We basically put 1 meter in the back of a cove near the tributary or stream, and that helps us understand the water quality that's coming out of that tributary or stream, which is kind of reflective of what's happening in the watershed. We also put another meter in the cove portion of the lake, so the main portion of the lake, and that's really kind of hopefully giving us a better understanding of how the water quality in the cove is responding to things like boat traffic or storms, that kind of thing. So again, the meters are taking data about every 15 minutes, so it's giving us not just a once a month idea of what's happening in the lake, but it's actually capturing data over the course of the day, the season, and the year. So this is it's giving us a full picture of what's going on. So that's the water quality monitoring effort. Next slide, please. In addition to the water quality monitoring, we've been doing SAV monitoring or submerged aquatic vegetation monitoring in the lake since 2010. Some people refer to these things as aquatic weeds, but they're actually, they're plants. They're very important to the lake ecology. They help buffer our water quality. They provide numerous resources and functions to the lake ecosystem, in addition to supporting the wonderful fishery that we have it here at Deep Creek Lake. So we've been tracking the vegetation really since 2010. And we kind of hit pause last year because we wanted to make sure that our monitoring program could better tackle some of the key management issues. And as Jim mentioned, there's been a push and an interest from various stakeholders about looking at if drawdown could help manage some of the SAV populations in the nearshore environment. So we wanted to make sure that our monitoring program that we had in place for SAV could actually hopefully assess any changes in the SAV community, whether it be density or species composition based on that winter water level drawdown. So that's kind of what we've got planned this year. Again, a big thanks to the Lake Management Office. They fund this work, and that's through the Maryland Park Service. So we anticipate that our new monitoring program will not only be able to track changes in the SAV community over time based on natural things like weather, climate, temperature, precip changes, but also hopefully be able to look at how any changes in the winter water levels would be impacting the plant community. So for more information on this, I want to make a strong plug out for the next Brunch and Learn, which we'll be doing, which is in about a month. And that will be focusing specifically on SAV in the lake, as well as the few literature reviews that we've done looking at what the literature says about how drawdown can impact SAV. So next slide, please. Again, my group resource assessment works in collaboration with the Maryland Park Service on our aquatic invasive species, or AIS, prevention and education efforts. For the last 2 years, we've been sponsoring and supporting an AIS training that's offered through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Aquatic Nuisance Species Grant in cooperation with the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission. This is a group out of the West Coast that actually puts on annual trainings for states around the country for AIS inspection and decontamination. This is incredibly important. We have a launch door program in place here at Deep Creek Lake, and that's again supported by the Maryland Park Service. We work with them on that, but we've been seeing zebra mussel infected boats coming in the last couple of years, and it's increasing in numbers, and the processes that are required to sufficiently and accurately decontaminate a boat or rid a boat of zebra mussels is a little bit more involved. And so what we've been doing with this training is we've been reaching out to the local marinas, the yacht clubs, other folks that would be state staff that would be responsible for checking boats, making sure that they're clean, drained, and dry, and they're not carrying invasive species. And so we had kind of a regional effort, knowing that this is, it's not just something that we here in Maryland can tackle. We need this to be a regional effort. So we reached out to our state representatives in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and invited them to the training this year. And we're going to continue to collaborate regionally and throughout the country on this very important topic of AIS inspection and decontamination, as well as education, and hopefully keep the lake, in the state that it's in, which is fantastic. In addition to the training that we offer, we've been doing a hydrilla herbicide treatment, which is hydrilla is an invasive aquatic plant that's basically throughout the United States, but we found it in 2013. We've been treating it since 2014. It's a long process. Unfortunately, once you have this plant to basically eradicate it, we're in the 9th year of treatment. It's been highly successful. And I think largely because we acted quick and we've had a good monitoring program in place. So for more information on that, you can click on that hyperlink when this presentation is shared later. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there's many other units at work here. We've got the Maryland Park Service, we've got the Forest Service, we've got our Fisheries Service, we have our Wildlife and Heritage Service, we've got Natural Resource Police that are all different units within DNR that are functioning here at the lake and in the watershed. And I just want to report on some key things that have come out from some of these other units. So the Maryland Park Service, they have the state park at Deep Creek Lake. They also have the Lake Management Office, which is the folks that do your dock permits. They manage the buffer strip. Some great news, the State Park Boat Ramp will be getting new docks in 2023. For more information on that, you can contact the State Park Manager, Roy Musselwhite, and his email's there. The Lake Management Office, also called the DCL, Natural Resource Management Area, or NRMA. They have been deploying fish habitat. You can see those pictures in the upper right of the fish habitat structures. They're basically reef balls. So they've been deploying them around the lake to provide additional fish habitat. We have a fantastic fishery here at Deep Creek Lake, and we want to see that continue. They've also been working tirelessly on shoreline erosion control projects, and that's what Jim had mentioned. So for more information about any of the shoreline erosion control projects or anything related to the Lake Management Office, you can contact them or Eric Null. He's the lake manager here at Deep Creek Lake. And they also support, the Maryland Park Service runs our launch steward program at the Deep Creek Lake State Park Boat Ramp, which is fantastic. And it's a tremendous program that really helps with aquatic invasive species prevention. So I want to thank them for that. And that is ongoing again this year as well. Next slide, please. So from some other units, I reached out to our Forest Service, and they basically mentioned that there was a great project that the Sky Valley Association, which is the largest homeowners association on the lake, they took advantage of the Tremendous Maryland, the Urban Tree Grant Program, and the Keep Maryland Beautiful Grant. And they were able to basically reconstruct a drainage ditch and make it look and function a lot better in their Sky Valley Association. Within their property. And they also planted close to 50 trees around that culvert to improve drainage and help, keep the water on the land, which is the goal. And then they also, the Forest Service mentioned that they would like the public to know about how they can make their property better fire safe. And so there's a program called FireWise, and that's a hyperlink to that on the slide that you can check at your leisure. For any information Forest Service related, please contact Melissa Nash there. She's fantastic. They have a stewardship program. They can develop plans. They have tree planting programs. So if you're interested in anything forest related, please contact Melissa. Next slide, please. And then we also have our fisheries and our wildlife service. They're based out of Mount Nebo on 219. Our local fisheries office, they just did a brunch and learn. Matt Sell is pictured there. He is our new Western Region Fisheries District Manager, and they are conducting a walleye study currently at Deep Creek Lake. They went out this spring and tagged about 450 walleye. They have a program where they're asking the public if they catch a tagged walleye, they call that walleye in so they can get the data on that and better understand how this population is doing. So any information, there's a hyperlink to the study, it's online. But you can also reach out to Matt at the Mount Nebo office at that phone number there, or contact him via email. Additionally, folks may have seen that bears and wildlife are definitely out and about currently with these temperatures. Any wildlife related questions, I always field a lot of those, but they shouldn't go to me. They should go to the Mount Nebo Wildlife Office. And there's the number there, the 301-334-3296. They also have a website about what you need to do about nuisance or injury law. Did I lose you, Ashley? Next slide.
Very good.
Okay, yep, we're good. So lastly, the State Lakes Protection and Restoration Fund, we have that has been funded for 3 additional years at $1 million per year. So that's great news. For more information about that, you can check out that hyperlink there. This fund has supported projects at the 16 state-owned lakes, including Deep Creek, for the past 3 years, and will be ongoing for another 3 years, which is fantastic. Deep Creek Lake has historically received about half of that $1 million annually. And funding has been used to continue the hydrilla herbicide treatments, the shoreline stabilization, erosion control projects, and fish habitat. Any questions about the State Lakes project, you can contact Mike Naylor at the email listed below. And I think that's about it. So I'll turn it over to Bruce Michael. He's going to talk about the Arrowhead Cove project.
Good morning, everyone. Again, thanks for joining the call this morning, and a special thanks to Bob and Ashley for their continued work, with the foundation and the extension service. Many of you have probably heard about the Deep Creek Lake Arrowhead Cove sediment removal project, or pilot dredging project, and I just want to give you an update on that. We've been actually working on the design phase of that project for several years with state funding. And last year, the state of Maryland allocated an additional $2.2 million of state funds to actually proceed with the project. And this basically means that we have all the funding necessary to remove approximately 15,000 cubic yards of material. And just to let everyone know, we've been working on this design phase for the last several years. And right now we are going through an extensive review process with Maryland Department of Natural Resources. They've been their environmental review unit, which includes all the fisheries, resource assessment service, the Park Service, Wildlife and Heritage have all reviewed the design plans. And we're also doing a regulatory permit review as well with Maryland Department of the Environment and the Army Corps of Engineers, which is required for any project of this scope, any dredging within the state. Next slide. The approach for dredging Arrowhead Cove was based on previous studies throughout on Deep Creek Lake. And how we decided to actually do the dredging, there was an alternatives analysis that was conducted by our contractor MES and Anchor QEA Engineering, and they evaluated the various types of options. The options included mechanical versus hydraulic dredging, the dewatering process, the staging areas where the equipment would be located and where the material would be dewatered. And then they also evaluated the construction, the durability, the cost, the permitting and all. And they did an extensive evaluation of that. Next slide, please. Okay, the selected approach was mechanical dredging in the dry. This is the most cost-effective means to dredge material. Mechanical dredging has been successfully completed in many other Maryland lakes. There is, because the cove is so shallow, Arrowhead Cove is so shallow, very difficult to actually do hydraulic dredging where we would actually need barges out there to do that. We also looked at the impact on fisheries, recreational use, and so that's why we went with mechanical dredging. And that mechanical dredging will be, the goal is to have that started next year. We're still in that review process and getting the final permits for that. But anyway, we are moving forward. We're looking at a passive dewatering aspect where the sediment will be dewatered in a staging area adjacent to the cove. And the sand fraction of that material will allow for additionally dewatering and stockpiles before it is loaded up into trucks that would then carry the material. And tentatively, we would look at a beneficial reuse of that material as clean landfill cover. Next slide. The existing, one of the reasons why Arrowhead Cove was selected is because Arrowhead Cove basically consists of open mud flats when the lake levels are low in the fall and early winter. There are no known debris or fish habitat structures in the area that would have to be moved. And currently there is minimal water depth in there. So there's little SAV in the section that we're looking at in Arrowhead Cove. And by removing some of that sediment will give us greater depth, which will improve potential SAV habitat and improve fish habitat by providing that additional water depth over the winter. Okay, next slide. Okay, these are just some pictures of Arrowhead Cove during the fall. You can see the amount of sediment that is exposed during those low water levels, again, and that is usually in the fall. Next slide. Another picture of Arrowhead Cove in the fall when the water levels are down. We will be doing the dredging during the fall and early winter. Again, that goal is to have everything in place to begin this work next fall. The water level will be held at the lower rule band. We are not going to exceed the lower rule band though. So there are no special exceptions to the Brookfield permit. But we are coordinating our efforts very closely with Brookfield, and they will be keeping that water level at that lower water level limit for most of that time during the fall of 2023. Okay, next slide, final slide here. This is a proposed schematic of the dredging area. This is where it's not finalized yet because we're still working with the MDE and the Army Corps of Engineers, the regulatory agencies on this before we finalize it. Goal will be have everything done this year and early next year. We want to potentially expand it maybe a little bit further to the west side or to the left of that yellow area there, which would allow more area to capture some of the sediment that's coming in from Arrowhead Creek. We are working again with the regulatory agencies for that final design for next year. There will be an extensive, even though we are reviewing it, with all the appropriate agencies, there will also be a public comment period on this, and we will hold those meetings, public comment meetings, probably early next year when we're closer to actually selecting a contractor for the project and getting the work underway. And we will let you all know when those public comments will be. We'll be advertising those on various websites, both probably the county, MDE, and potentially DNR as well. Okay, finally, last slide here. I want to thank everybody for their participation today. We're going to open it up to questions. If anyone has any questions on any of the for any of the speakers that we had today, and this is some of the contact information for the speakers that we had. And with that, I will open it up to questions. And Ashley, I'll let you take the lead on that. I believe we probably have a couple in the chat, and if anybody else has a question, just let us know. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time today.
Yes, thank you guys. Great presentation. So we'll leave this slide with the contact information up in case anybody wants to jot that down while we are answering a few questions. So if you guys can open the chat box, for those of you on the call, I've dropped in several links that you can click on as people were talking, so you can open that up. And to start off with, we have one about septic. So I'm not sure which one of our speakers want to address this question, but it says a lot of talk of this week about septic system smells near Route 219 in Glendale, as well as a rumor of 20,000 gallons of wastewater released into the lake daily. What of this is true versus rumor, and any plans to address if real? And if we can't address this today, we can always send this to our specialist.
Right. I am not familiar with that. I haven't heard of any of those rumors about a sewage spill, but we will certainly check it out with the county, and we'll get that information back to you, Ashley, if that is actually true and what it potentially means to the lake. I don't know if anybody else has heard about that this last week. So.
No, but we can definitely check with the health department and utilities.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that, but we can check it out. And I do think you all, the county does post when there is a sewage spill, it does get posted on your website, so folks can check that out as well.
Okay, great. And our last week, or last month, our Brunch and Learn speaker was Craig Umble with Garrett County Health Department, and he was talking all about septic systems and their function. So we can definitely maybe get in touch with him. So the next question is, brings up the persistent overflow of sewage into the lake from the pumping station at the south side of the headwater of the cove. Will the dredging project incorporate any effort to address this ongoing threat to water quality in Arrowhead?
We are doing, as part of the dredging project, we want to look and make sure that we keep the sediment and any potential, pollutant, whether it be septic, whether it be nutrient runoff. So we are looking and evaluating potential projects for the Arrowhead stream upstream of Arrowhead Cove. That's one of the reasons that we did the shoreline stabilization project there at the Silver Tree to keep shoreline erosion and the sediment coming in for that. So, we'll certainly be looking at that as well. Good question.
Thank you. Now, does MDE consider the lack of rain that impacts lake levels when issuing the rule ban permits?
Yes, I can take that. In fact, we do. Interestingly, the permit considered climate change predictions and observed changes in precipitation. And on average, we're fortunate in the northeast area of the United States, or the mid-Atlantic, that we anticipate getting more rain on average. Out west, it's the opposite. They're suffering a mega drought. So historically, the lake has rapidly been able to refill from winter into spring. This is a potential concern that if the water is drawn down, question is, will it refill? It seems like that isn't a great concern, but obviously it is one that's being looked into. And just somewhat related, some folks ask, well, why is the permit allowing Brookfield to actually release more water than they have in the past? And that's a reflection of observed data that shows there has been more rainfall and more water accumulation in the lake. And basically, they more or less have to release that water, otherwise they would overflow the spillway, which they don't want to let water go over the spillway because it's not really good for the structure, as well as there is some development downstream. So there's actually more water on average, but we do recognize, particularly with climate change and the extreme changes in weather patterns, that we could face a drought. So that is something that we're sensitive to.
All right, thank you so much. All right, any other questions, please enter them into the chat. Otherwise, we are going to wrap up this presentation. I'll give you guys just a few seconds to enter any last questions. I do want to echo a thank you to all of our speakers. You guys were very generous to thank me for organizing these, but without great speakers and great topics, I wouldn't have anything to do. So I thank you all very much for your time today and for putting together this great presentation. We will be sharing the link to the recording in the next few days once we get it up on our YouTube channel with Western Cluster of University of Maryland Extension. So once we get it posted, I will send that recording along with the PDF of the slides so that you can get all this great information right in your inbox. So any further questions, enter them in the chat. Otherwise, we are going to stop the recording. And